Hey-ho, let's go. And a happy Friday to everybody. Hope you're well wherever you are. I am Sean Pugsley Martin. This is episode 109 of Pugsley's Pit Football Today. And as we begin the show each week, as we always do, we start by asking you, where else would you rather be than right here? Boom! Right now. There's a familiar face right there. We'll get to him in just a moment. Today's show, a look back the first half of college football season, look ahead to the next half, beginning with a monster weekend. I'm finally coming around to conference realignment when it gives us Georgia and Texas. Also later in the My World segment, the Huskers, Davante Adams and the new kid in town in Las Vegas, and the sight of Tom Brady wearing silver and black makes me want to hurl. By way of introduction, I'm a freelance sports writer for the Albany Times Union, RPI Union Hockey this weekend. Very excited. Avid sports enthusiast, big-time homer for my teams. Follow the show on Twitter at Pugsley's Pit. I'm taking the podcast on YouTube. With that, you see him, Mr. Thomas Kozlowski, co-host of Levac and Gaz, here in the 518 on Fox Sports Radio 95.9, 980 AM. Got to be enjoying the 5-1 Syracuse Orangemen, right?
The Orange are making me very happy. I would hope that the Orange would be at the spot, the optimistic fan that I am, but I'm very impressed with a lot of things that Coach Fran Brown has done. If you told me Syracuse would head into a Thursday night matchup after a bye week against the ranked Pittsburgh team at 5-1, that would be about best case scenario. And knock on wood, majority of the team is healthy. Life is good for Syracuse football fans like me.
Now, we'll get into the Orange a little bit. I want to give you a little more time for that. So we're gonna warm up.
All right.
With the top 25, I'm looking at the top 6 right now, right? We're halfway through. Texas number 1. They deserve it. I'm not sure that they're the best team. We're going to find out a lot more about them tomorrow. But any observation now, when I was on your show, I said Oregon was going to miss the playoff. I was wrong. They gutted one out last week. I just still don't think they're that good. I would take Ohio State in a rematch. But what are your observations on college football season to date?
It's interesting. I kind of can feel where your mind is going a little bit with your take, because it almost feels like the feel of 2024 college football, where the number 1 team, we might finish this season with 6 or 7 different teams who have that number 1 ranking in the AP, which used to be so important that you weren't going to play for a national championship, be called the mythical national champion if you weren't the number 1 team. So I get why people have talked about at one point Alabama, one point Texas, one point Georgia, Oregon. There's going to be a bunch of teams in the mix. How many more get into the Ohio State, Michigan, the defending champion? How many were in the mix? My top 25 right now, I still have Texas as the number 1 team in the country. That could change this weekend, but they've gone out and defeated teams that have been good enough. The roster is absolutely loaded. And I have Oregon at number 2. Oregon is tested. Oregon has not looked as impressive and blown teams out. But the fact is that those 2 teams, talent-wise, since the preseason, have had the most loaded rosters. They've had impressive victories. And it's hard for me to make an argument. Bama, maybe, but they've suffered a loss this season to Vandy. It's hard for me to find anybody else. If it's not those 2, then who? But that's been the fun part of the season. Maybe we find out if an upset can be pulled this weekend with the Bulldogs again.
Yeah, we'll see. The other team I liked was Penn State. They showed a little bit of grit last week. Look, I think USC is struggling kind of as I thought they might. They're still really talented, but I thought Penn State showed a lot of chutzpah last week in LA by coming back and winning that game.
Here's the thing with Penn State, and I will confess this. I'm not a big Penn State fan. I'm trying to have right? Like, it's always hard when we do these rankings. We don't want our personal bias to look at a school that we root against to be affected by it. The Illinois win is better than people realize, because Illinois had come off 2 top 25 victories off the road. Penn State's preseason hype helped them, their name being Penn State, because the tough part about Penn State is that Penn State versus Iowa State versus Indiana. Okay, Iowa State's in the Big 12, but if Penn State was named Indiana, would they be ranked 19th? There's something about the tradition of being named Penn State that has helped the Nittany Lions get all the way to 3, because, gosh, a lot of the teams we just mentioned right there, I think a lot of them could beat them, but they have it. They don't have to play them. So they are benefiting from a nice start to the season tradition and having enough wins to stay in the top 3.
Well, and 2 teams with a loss. Ohio State, We'll talk much more about Kyle McCord later because I love his story. I thought he almost went to Nebraska. He was there like a day before Dylan Raiola flipped, and I think McCord might have ended up there. But I'm happy for him because here's a guy that led Ohio State to a one-loss season last year, and they ran him out of town. And I texted you the other night. He would have slid with 1 second left, unlike Will Howard. And I'm surprised they let Will Howard back onto campus in Columbus because that fan base is rough. Now, I talk about them, and we'll get into Georgia, Texas a little bit. Georgia had that loss against Bama. They showed a lot of heart by getting back in that game, which is one of the reasons I like them. The other team I also want to talk about, you take all three. Miami just got by Cal. They look like the best team in the ACC, not named Syracuse. But what are your thoughts on those three?
Yeah, it's interesting because Ohio State and Miami still being undefeated. I think Cam Ward's a fantastic player. Damian Martinez, Mario Cristobal, until we see them go a little bit further, I think we'll still have the criticism of, do you trust him in a close game to make the right decision? Cam Ward has let a comeback against Virginia Tech in what I consider to be the best college football game of the year. That Friday night Hail Mary finish, was it a catch, wasn't it a catch? And the 25-point comeback on the road where College Game Day was. Miami deserves credit. They deserve to be recognized for what they've been able to do. The thing with Ohio State, I'm glad you set it up for that. It is unrealistic expectations at Ohio State that you have to go undefeated and be the best quarterback in the country.
Yeah.
And have NFL wide receiver. Like, this is not even, it's not even at this point. Because look, they came off some really good players. The late Dwayne Haskins was a Heisman Trophy finalist. Justin Fields was the number 1 5-star can't-miss prospect in the country. Kyle McCord was a 5-star. They've had these incredible athletes. But I don't even know if at this point the Ohio State fan base knows what they want out of the quarterback position. But this is really important. I'm going to stress this a lot probably for the next 6 weeks for call them old school college football fans like you and I, that with a 12-team college football playoff now, the regular season isn't devalued, but your season isn't over anymore. Like if we had this conversation 4 years ago, 6 years ago, the Ohio State loss would have cost their season. Somebody else would be playing for a national championship. If they go back and win the Big Ten, they're going to have a top 4 seed with 1 loss. So even though it's a loss, and we're all getting kind of used to this, like they can still not only play for a national championship, but win a national championship. Same can be said for Miami.
What about Georgia now? Look, Bama boat raced them in the first half. Georgia came back. Their problem at Texas, they still have to go Ole Miss and then host what I think is an underrated Tennessee team. Is this a must-win for Georgia this week?
It is the most interesting, fascinating. I love that question because I think the answer is no, because they're going to lose potentially they lose 2 games this season. But the reason I lean towards no is we don't know yet how this college football playoff committee is going to grade the SEC. So here's a scenario that's very likely to play out. So for those who forget, there is no more SEC East. There is no more SEC West. So just math is going to tell us, we'll use A&M for an example, okay? Let's say A&M finishes with 1 loss in the SEC. They're going to play in the SEC title game. So A&M might play Texas. Like an A&M versus Texas. So because 2 lost Georgia, potentially 1 lost Bama, Ole Miss, all these teams that would have played in the SEC title game years ago aren't going to play in the game. Yeah. So it's like, what are we going to do with this? Are we going to take a 2-loss SEC team who lost to 2 top 5 teams and make them the 10th seed, the 11th seed, or are we going to kick them out of the playoff and put a 1-loss ACC school in? Like if Clemson or Miami face off in the ACC title game, we've got to think both of those are getting in. Are we going to put a 1-loss? That's the fun part of this. So do I think the Georgia season's over? No. But we are all in uncharted territory now. A 2-loss SEC school could get the 10th seed in the college football playoff because they don't play in the SEC title game, and it benefits them. Yeah. How that's going to play out.
I look into that game tomorrow. I'm glad my son's got a 10:30 football game. I'll get home just in time for Husker ball at noon. Thank you to the schedule makers in our league. I owe you one. You got Alabama, Tennessee is always a great game. It's big again. Georgia, Texas tomorrow night. I love Georgia in this game getting points. Love them because I think they're the best team in the country. They got housed by Alabama. Most teams would have walked away in the second half and taken their beating and gone on the bus. They battled back and actually had the lead. Texas deserves to be number one. You can only play who's on your schedule, but they haven't played a hard schedule.
They beat Michigan, which is still in the top 25. They beat Oklahoma, still in the top 25. Is this the best team they're going to play all season? Probably.
Yeah.
Best team they play. Georgia's beating Alabama. They beating Clemson. Gosh, those schedules are out. First of all, out loud. How about this? It's October 17th, and we're seeing these games happen. This is an incredible college football fan. You're leaning towards Georgia. I feel like it's probably perfect where it is right now. I probably would take like a game-winning field goal in the fourth quarter to decide this. Texas has the better offense, so I will take Texas. But if there's a turnover late and you're texting me late at night, like, guys, I told you, I wouldn't be stunned. This feels like a fourth quarter late turnover game-winning field goal type of game.
Uh-oh. We'll wait for him to hopefully get back. Well, I say I am an I told you so kind of guy. So hopefully, I don't know if he can hear me. I don't know if he can see me, but we're going to keep going with this anyway. Alabama and Tennessee. Here he is. You got me?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. All right. The dreaded glitch. It was only about 10 seconds. Not too bad. Now, look, I am an I told you so kind of guy. So if Georgia wins, you might get that text. What about Bama, Tennessee? Really the loss at Vanderbilt's troubling enough because that just shouldn't happen. Really, what's more troubling about Alabama is needing a 2-point conversion stop against South Carolina to follow that up at home to avoid going to overtime. That one bothers me as much as the Vandy loss. They should have gone and taken them to the house.
Yeah, we're going to go through this here with Alabama because Alabama, transfer portal, whether it's a new head coach, whether it's a more competitive SEC, rolling through teams. Now, some people who follow Alabama football will know this, and they don't want to admit it. You look at some of their schedules, might have been a little easier than we realized. Like 9 of the 12 games might have been easy. Now, maybe I say that because Alabama playing someone, it should feel easy to them. This matchup against Tennessee, Josh Heupel's done such a fantastic job with that program. They've got a really good quarterback who can sling it. This is a school, Tennessee. You want to talk about NIL and paying players? I know A&M got the heat years ago. Tennessee spend it. There's a report a couple of weeks ago that if you're a volunteer season ticket holder or buying tickets, your money's going to pay the players. Here's a program that's benefited from that. Tennessee can hang with them. Like if Tennessee gets up like 10-0 or 14, they're going to win. Like it's over. They can't catch them. And remember, this was 2 years ago. Hendon Hooker led that upset where Tennessee football was finally back. And if Hooker doesn't get hurt, he might have a chance to win the Heisman Trophy. So I would take Tennessee. I would take the Vols in this game because a lot of things you said of Alabama not looking impressive. And it looks like they actually have the horses to run with the Crimson Tide.
Yeah. I'll say this about Tennessee. It just jogged my memory. I was at Disney World last week with the family. Of all the people Saturday I saw, and actually all week, Tennessee was the most represented college football team as far as T-shirts and hats down in Orlando. It's something that was very noticeable to me. You saw that orange tee everywhere.
It's a strong, passionate fan base. They've been waiting. They've been waiting for this moment for the last 25 years since T. Martin and Peerless Price led them to the promise.
Yeah, right. Now, I asked about Georgia's as a must-win. I think this is a knockout game for Bama and Tennessee. Bama still has they still have LSU on the schedule. They have at Oklahoma. You got the Iron Bowl, which is always tough. Tennessee's they're at Georgia, not far off. I think both of them have to have this game, though I just can't imagine, and maybe this is just the different times. It'd be hard to look at an Alabama team as not being one of the 12 best in the country, but you get 2 losses and you're not playing for a title even lower than Georgia maybe, let's say. It's very feasible that one of these teams is done after this week. Do you agree with that, or can they get back?
A lot of that is going to play to what happens and how the committee views the ACC and the Big Ten. The Big 12 is a little harder because right now the Big 12 seems like it's BYU or Kansas State. It really is leaning towards the Big 12 only getting 2 teams, but the ACC. So let's play this out. Let's say at the end of it, Miami Clemson and Syracuse for the fun of this conversation.
Okay.
Let's all have one loss. So who's getting knocked out? So we're only going to take 2 of the 3 SEC teams if they have the same exact record, and Miami plays Syracuse, and Clemson and Miami could face off in the ACC title game. How do we view that? To the Big Ten, Indiana is undefeated. What if Indiana has 1 loss and loses in the Big Ten title game? So because their name's Indiana, they're not going to get in. Iowa State, I mentioned the Big 12, like Iowa State and BYU are. The question is, will this committee look at 3 and 4 SEC teams? I'm talking the ones who don't play in the SEC title game over a runner-up in the bigger conference. I wish I knew the answer to that. I think that's going to be. I know Florida State went undefeated and they kept them out last season.
Sure did.
If I had to say what I think the committee would do with a scenario like that, they would lean towards the SEC because I've seen them do that before. But again, different format, different people, different thoughts, different season. I don't have anything to base it off of. So I would lean towards those SEC teams getting in because most recently we saw smart, I'll use air quotes for that, smart minds lean towards the SEC. And look, they've done it for the last 10 years, dominated college football.
Yeah. What about, you left one out too, by the way?
Nebraska. I did.
Nebraska.
I did.
Come on.
That was a tough loss at Illinois. That was a really canceled school, moved high school football game.
Yeah, that was rough. But,
they're almost there. 2025. If you're excited about them now, one more recruiting class, they're almost there. Almost.
We're getting close. Yeah, we'll find out tomorrow a little more about the Huskers. But I want to let you talk a little more about Syracuse. You mentioned at Pitt. Then you host Virginia Tech, at BC, at Cal, home to UConn, November 30, home to Miami. Could this team be looking at 10-2? Are you going to run the table there, or do you have a blip?
The hope was 8-4 for me. I thought of 8-4. That's a fantastic season. If I want to be a spoiled Syracuse fan right now, I don't know if you're allowed to do that after some of the most recent seasons, but if I wanted to be spoiled, I would come on here and complain about how bad that Stanford loss was at home on a Friday night, that if they beat Stanford, they're 6-0 and likely a top 16 to 20 team in the country because of the UNLV win of when it happened. But I won't be spoiled. I will say that they are poised because they have the best players in the best positions to go now 9-3 because Gadsden, a tight end wide receiver, is fantastic. His father played in the NFL. Kyle McCord, we both like. This is going to be a kid who's going to get drafted in the NFL draft. Where? It might be determined over the next 6 weeks. You've got 4- and 5-star prospects on the defense that Fran Brown brought in from Georgia. So football, as any sport, is not like we have the best guy or guys 1 to 5. We can beat you. But boy, it feels like that sometimes with Syracuse, that give the best player the ball most often and they can make a play. That's been the theme of Fran Brown so far. So 9-3 is in play. The most intriguing games are that most intriguing games are the California game, which you mentioned. Just feels odd saying California ACC still, and Miami. Yeah. Like those, they're likely Syracuse going to be dogs in both of those games.
Okay. Is there a team lurking in the bushes? Like, I look at the AP rankings, LSU's ranked 8th. I don't see that. I think they're way, way overrated. Is there anybody out there we're missing? I like Ole Miss, but they got 5-2, and you are what your record says you are. It's a little strange.
You are feeling the same thing I am about LSU. I actually think LSU is going down this week to Arkansas. The Hogs are going to be ready to take down the Tigers. LSU is squeaked out with a few victories, and it feels like anytime Brian Kelly has any loss, the LSU fan base, which is another wild fan base, doesn't think he should be employed. So I love Arkansas this week. Sam Pittman and company there. I think the Hogs pulled the upset. It's a small dog, only 3 points at home. So I like that. A team that's hard to understand, a team that has a path to shake something up and confuse college football fans is Boise State.
Yeah.
So Boise State, I believe you and I talked about this team in the preseason too, that Boise State has one of the best running backs in the country on their team. They're so good that the former 5-star number 1 prospect in the country quarterback's their backup. And their lone loss could be to Oregon. So we play out this scenario, okay? Let's say let's say Boise State runs the table.
Yep.
How high do they go? Are they 6th or 7th? I've heard some rumors that some people believe there's a scenario that they can be a top 4 squad. Well, the top they're supposed to be the top 4 automatic bids, the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC. Some people are saying, well, why shouldn't Boise State get one of those bids? Well, is Boise State going to be 5 and then all of a sudden have to play a really good 12 team that's Georgia and gets screwed? Army and Navy are undefeated. So it is Boise State become the at-large in the group of 5, non-power 4. I know, gosh, these terms are so weird now. Like if Army or Navy go undefeated, so they're going to get in Boise can crash everything. So that's the team I'm most intrigued by. How do the committee, how do fans, how do viewers handle the Boise State Broncos if they run the table?
You know, the interesting thing, you mentioned the Oregon loss. That was only a 37-34 loss.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, style points sometimes matter. On the road. In one of the hottest venues in the country. Or toughest to play, I should say. Not hottest as far as crowd environment. All right, listen. I want to thank you and appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you. Catch you later. Enjoy the podcast. Good luck to Raiders and Cornhuskers and everybody else.
We're hoping to have a good weekend, a better weekend. I'll get in both those teams now, including Davante Adams and Tom Brady, and just what a week. Yeah. What a week. Be good, my friend. All right. Thanks to Gaz. He's always great. Great to have on the program. Hey, let's head to Nebraska through Bloomington, Indiana. Huge test for the Huskers this week, right? We're 5-1. You want to get that 6th win down, get the bowl eligibility. Haven't done that since 2016. So you want to just take care of that. But Indiana 6-0. They one of the surprise teams in the country, I guess. They have not played the hardest schedule in the world, but you're going to find out a lot about them. You hear about Coach Signetti there. I heard him. Read that he was somebody compared him or called him the next Nick Saban a few weeks ago. And you know what? IU football 6-0. You are what your record says you are. For the Huskers this week, Dylan Raiola has been great. I think the play calling has been a bit conservative. 14-7 over Rutgers. You know, the win over Purdue. I'm not going to worry too much about that sort of thing. Took their foot off the gas against Colorado a little bit. I don't care about that. Just win games, right? We're trying to build a culture there. Matt Rule's trying to build a culture, and he is. And that's what it's about. It comes down to what's the bottom line, and that's success. For the Huskers to have success on the road this week, they got to clean up the penalties. You know, Rule has been very vocal about that in his pressers, that the penalties on the defensive end, and as he said, you know, even offensively, not the holding call or the pass interference, it's the before the snap penalties, offsides or false start, or just, you know, defensive holding. You gotta clean that up for the Huskers, so they can clean up those penalties and limit turnovers this week. Yeah, we can win this game, absolutely, because Nebraska can get to the quarterback. That defensive front with Nash Huntmaker and Ty Robinson has been fantastic. Secondary's been good, so it would be a great test for the Huskers. We'll see. Hopefully, we're 6-1 going to Columbus next week in Ohio State. We're going to find out. But again, it's a big game to see where are the Huskers under Matt Rule. Guys may be right, though. 2025 seems a little more likely for Nebraska, but you know what? 5-1. Let's keep it going. Go to the NFL, right? I'm conflicted with the Raiders and Davante Adams. Part of me, I hope he does well in New York. I like Davante Adams. I enjoyed having him on our team. You know, he arrived in Vegas to team up with his college buddy Derek Carr. Okay, so Carr got let go, right? And got sent to New Orleans because Josh McDaniels, a D-bag. That's a 5-year disaster it's going to take the Raiders to recover from. He completely butchered that setup. Carr's gone. They bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, who sucks. And now this year with Minshew and O'Connell, and they're really struggling at quarterback. And I don't blame necessarily the Raider front office for that. You know, you got 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 11 picks right in front of you. There's nobody there left to pick. And free agency was not ripe with a lot of guys, you know. So, but the plan this year was to go in with what we had and try and work around it. That hasn't happened. Not even close. They're 2-4 with a schedule that really they should be 4-2 at a minimum. Luke Getsy's been terrible as an offensive coordinator. I don't know what he's doing. Absolutely awful. But here's the problem I have with Davante. Again, I hope he goes to New York. I think he does well. It'd be a nice story. I'm no Aaron Rodgers fan, but it would be a nice story for the Big Apple. I got a lot of friends who are Jet fans, and they deserve a little bit of happiness. My problem with Davante Adams is coming off the Carolina game. Antonio Pierce took to his press conference and said that some of the players had made business decisions that day, and it was time for the Raiders to make some too. Adams hasn't played since then, right? And then he shows up with a hamstring injury, and he has to miss a couple of games. And then you find out Tuesday morning he's a New York Jet. He flew to New York Monday night, and now he's going on Pat McAfee show because he's staying at Rodgers' house. Oh, and by the way, he's going to play this week. The hammy's good enough. I just can't help the feeling that Davante Adams quit on the Raiders. He quit on his teammates. He said all the right things during his time here about being a leader, being a teammate. He vouched for Antonio Pierce. He said all the right things until it was time that he'd had enough. And I get it. The Raider organization is a circus. I'll get into that in a few minutes. But now all of a sudden he's going to play this week. I don't put this move in the same quitter class as Randy Moss in the late 2000s, but it's close. Yeah, I think he quit on the team. I think he quit on his teammates and the organization and the fans. All right, so we'll see how he does in New York, going from 1-2-4 team to another 2-4 team. So good luck with that, Davante. The Raiders have a new minority owner, and if I had hair, I might go for this cut. No, I wouldn't. It really sickens me that Tom Brady is a part of the Raider organization, mostly because I view him as a fumbler and kind of a bit of a phony. But you know what? At this point, I'll try anything new. Richard Seymour's part of that group too. He at least played for the Raiders. I'll try anything new because Mark Davis is in over his head as an NFL owner. It seems like he's like one of the billions that he has enhanced his franchise. It seems like he is like enjoying a phrase as being the new popular kid in school while he's in Vegas. He hangs out with he runs around with some of the players from time to time. I don't think that's good at all. Ask Jerry Jones. Ask any coach for Jerry Jones that's ever had to try and hold a player accountable, and they go over the coach's head and call Jura. It doesn't work that way. And Mark Davis has made terrible hiring decisions. And that includes, I know he padded his bank account and enhanced the value of the franchise when he moved the team from Oakland to Las Vegas. But when the Raiders struggle, you go back and watch the video, 80% Steeler fans and those stupid, terrible towels. That's what it's going to be. And when you see it, they didn't move to a city that had like a hardcore Raider fan base. They had no Raider fan base there. Maybe a few, as you find anywhere on a national team. But those people, look, you got Raider tickets and you're not a hardcore Raider fan, you're going to put those tickets out on the internet and sell them for the highest bidder. And when I first heard they're going to Vegas, you've heard this on the show a million times, I was afraid that they wouldn't have a home field advantage because if I'm a fan of another team, Pittsburgh, the latest example, I want to go spend a weekend away to follow my team, I'm going to Las Vegas. You can get tickets and you can go have a heck of a time for a couple of days. So whatever. I don't care what it takes. We need a quarterback next year. I don't even care if it's Shedeur Sanders. If the scouts think he's that good, and I just think he's kind of too much into his brand and not so much the playing football, that's my belief. If he shows me wrong and he's a Raider and he proves me wrong, hey, that's awesome. I just want to win football games. And I'll tell you what, I feel bad for Max Crosby. He's now the sole face of the Raiders. Keep battling, man. He expressed a commitment to the team this week. Someone's asked him about the Lions possibly going after him with Aiden Hutchinson broken his leg, and I saw Crosby was quoted by saying, I play for the silver and black, not the silver and blue. And even on a bigger scale, this week, this is a big test for Antonio Pierce as a head coach. We just traded Davante Adams, just giving away football games by stupid mistakes, stupid penalties, not getting good quarterback play. You got a pretty good offensive line there that all of a sudden can't perform under anything. And that, to me, that's Luke Getsy's OC and his play calling, and he's not maximizing his talent around him. Sometimes when you're a new coach, you've got to tailor what you're doing around your talent. I don't think he's done that. And I think that's why some of these guys have gone backwards, Andre James particularly in the middle. So, but the Rams are 1-4, and it's going to be a Raider home game. It's a huge test, and we're going to find out a lot about where the Raiders are going this week against the Rams. We're going to get to 3-4 and see what happens, or 2-5, and the season just really goes into the toilet. So on that note, we're going to find out, but we'll try and join you again next week. Try and get back to making a weekly show. But before we let you go, shameless plug time. My books, Dear Liam and Noah, available on Amazon, as well as The Three Bulls, children's book recently published through Saratoga Springs Publishing Company. If you're interested, go to Amazon, go to click, and have at it and enjoy. But on that note, we will let you go, and we will see you next week.